Welcome to Biggest Geekus, Shorties edition, number 2. We are your hosts, and I am Joe.
I'm Randy.
This is our special mini episode that we do from time to time. Second time we've done it. Hopefully, we can do it more in the future.
Yeah.
We answer call-in questions and just wing whatever we can think of out of our minds, such as
Right.
they are. This is episode 2. Sunday, and the date is Sunday, March 7th, 2021.
All right, man. Cool. So we got us some call-ins, right?
Yes, if I'm a little out of it, we played a long game. Well,
We
I
were
don't
up
think we
late.
played. We were up late. We played
Game
and then we talked.
The game lasted to about 11:30 at least.
Yeah, so that was okay.
Yeah, it was fun.
But we talked a long time afterward, and I'm a little bit out of it. I'm an old dude.
Yeah, me too. I tried to take a nap, but I couldn't sleep this afternoon, so I got up.
I took a nap, a very short one.
Yeah.
A shorty.
Sweet. Perfect timing, homeboy.
Yeah. Just 20 minutes, and it did me a lot of good. But
Cool.
I'm not like a lot of people.
Oh, 20 minutes works.
Yeah. Power nap.
Yep.
All right. So you have a preference on what we start with?
I don't care. Knock us out. Do it.
All right. So let's go with the there was a couple that we've kind of held back from a week or two ago.
Yep.
So this is from Jason. And okay. So because I forgot what I was doing. I need to share audio.
Joe's
So you can both
skillful
hear
technological power is at
Yeah,
display.
yeah.
He's tired, folks. He's tired. Give him a pass now. That's cool. Be good to hear what Jason has to say. He's sent us several.
Boo, boo, boo. There. Now it should work.
Sweet.
Hey guys, Jason here. Just listening to Shorties episode 1. Guerrilla podcasting at its finest. Good job. Yeah, I don't know. I think Marvel superheroes had a bigger impact on me. Well, I can't really, I don't know if I can say that. I think as far as my GMing style, it definitely has, because I like a little more room to maneuver as a GM. I like a little more hand waviness here and there. Like Barbarians of Lemuria is my favorite sword and sorcery game by far. And it's not a story game, but it's kind of veers, a little more that way. The magic system's super freeform, things like that. So, yeah, I guess as a GM, maybe that's... But it's hard to say, so I had the Menser Red Box. I had that version, Beckme, and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition. And that's the only D&D I had as a kid, growing up. So I went in the Army that's the only D&D I ever played up till last year. I played one session. Last year I played one session of 2nd edition and one session of 5th edition, and that was Adventures of Middle-earth. So I don't know if I guess that counts as 5th edition. But, yeah, it's weird. That D&D, and especially Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, much more so than Beckme, left a big impression on me. Like the art, the little cartoons in there and stuff. That just, where they have the mouse ears and the noses and they're trying to infiltrate the cult. And all those cartoons, all that's really left an impact on me in my gaming. So, yeah, I don't know. I think they both left a big impact on me, but GM style, Marvel, I think, definitely left a bigger impact than the advice that Gary wrote, in first edition D&D. And like I say, I had Beckme, but we really quickly moved on to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons first edition, and that's what I had, till very recently. By the way, I was just giving you a hard time about the 3 not being D&D thing. Like Ford Fairlane tells Tone Loc, I friggin' love the new stuff. That might not be an exact quote. I haven't seen The Adventures of Ford Fairlane for a number of years. Maybe I need to revisit that movie.
Adventures of Ford Fairlane, dude. That's bringing back one.
Yeah, bringing back one that I've never seen. So
No, yeah. Well, Jason is a movie aficionado.
yes.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. He commented how the cartoons in the old books and the basic book and also in the DMG and stuff and Player's Handbook. I have to agree. They impacted me for sure.
Yeah. And that's referring to, I can't remember, we must have done this on an episode and not on a shorty, regular episode, not on a shorty episode where we were talking about imprinting.
Yeah, imprinting.
Yeah. Because of a news item, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting with, I guess he was running games under Phase Rip.
Yep.
And I think, I'm not sure when that version of the Marvel superheroes came out.
Early 80s.
Early 80s.
Yep.
Well, to be honest, everybody loves Gary, and Gary's all right.
Yep.
But Gary's advice in the early books wasn't from a whole lot of experience being a DM.
Well, no, because the game was barely, and the truth of it, I mean, he created the game okay, but he was, he was what, 6-7 years into the hobby himself?
Right.
And he was writing the game. So, I guess you could say he's the original GM or DM, but a lot of his stuff he said was not terribly helpful.
Well, after reading some other history, it seems like more like Arneson was more the original GM.
Oh yeah,
DM than he was.
Correct. He DM'd Gary first, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Oh no, and if I was listening to, if Blackmore's correct, I believe he ran Gary and Rob Kuntz and a couple other people for the first time, and that's when Gary said, "Man, that's awesome." And not to belittle Gary's impact on the game, just I think Arneson did do that. I thought it was fascinating that Jason liked Phase Rip so much, the Marvel Superheroes game, because I remember reading that back in the day and thinking it was okay. But when I revisited, I don't know if you recall, one of our cabin cons, probably the mid single digit, 6 or 7, I ran a Phase Rip game and I really liked it. I think the system has got a lot going for it. It's not a bad system at all.
Yeah. I don't know that it even has a whole lot of material either.
No,
it
not
has
tons.
some. It has some.
Yep.
But not a lot.
Right.
Which is fine because you can easily make your own. It's pretty open.
Oh,
yeah. Pretty open system, I think.
I think you could use it to do lots of any game, actually, if you wanted to.
Right. Okay. Well, this next message is from John at the Red Dice Diaries concerning LARPing.
Hey there guys, it's John here from the Red Dice Stories, just listening to your belated 5th edition review. I'm about a quarter of the way through, and I just wanted to say it made both me and Hannah chuckled to hear you mention her LARP story. And I can tell you that it was a standard LARP sword, certainly over here in the UK, which is basically a fiberglass rod with foam latex around it that's carved to look like a sword and then painted with like a mixture of latex and acrylic paints and coated with some sort of varnish and stuff like that to make it a bit more durable. So they can come with a bit of a whack, but they're not actually like dangerous weapons. But yeah, beating on that bin was pretty funny, and like I said, it made Hannah chuckle and myself chuckle to hear you guys mention it. Anyway, just thought I'd drop you a message to say thanks very much for the mention. I'm going to go back to listening to the episode now.
Yeah, that was good stuff. On his podcast, Red Dice Diaries, I can't remember the number,
right?
Which he and his wife host. There was a mention of a LARP incident where she thought a thing in front of her was a person and ended up being a trash can.
Yeah, that was pretty hilarious. And you harken back to the old. Gosh, what is it? The gazebo issue. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. That was pretty cool. Yeah.
That was.
Yeah.
All right.
Got a handful from Mr. Jason now, right?
Yeah, a bigger handful from our friend over at Nerds Variety RPG. No, Nerds RPG. RPG Variety Cast. Yeah.
You got it.
There's all those words are in there.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, are we going to group these a little bit and then chat about them?
Yeah, they are grouped. The first group is about Savage Worlds.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Jason on Savage Worlds.
Hey guys, Jason here. I'm going to give you probably a whole episode's worth of calls. Let's do Savage Worlds first. Savage Worlds is definitely an extra large for me. I used to play Savage Worlds a lot. The current groups I play with, we haven't been playing it, so it's been a few years. before the current edition, actually. Although I did back the current edition and, get the big box set for it. But Savage Worlds is super duper versatile. I love it. I guess my biggest negative with it might be the edges. I think they're called edges. The feats in Savage Worlds. Like I say, it's been 5 years or something like that since I played. But anyhow, they're sometimes, because of the number of them, depending on the world and the setting you're playing in, there's a lot of choices, and if you don't, and you have to plan them out ahead of time. I know you guys are 3.5 and Pathfinder players, so feat trees and all that isn't a bad thing for you, but for an old guy like me, it's kind of an issue. But that said, I've played everything from mobsters to Ghostbusters to Rifts to Sword and Sorcery to, you name it. Savage Worlds is great. One setting I really like is, I think it's Age of Ragnarok, or the Day After Ragnarok. The Day After Ragnarok, a Ken Hite setting, where in World War II, the Nazis summoned up the Midgard Serpent, and so the Americans nuked it, and it fell across Europe, and now you have a Sword and Sorcery 1950s in a kind of post-apocalyptic world. Really great setting. But yeah, Savage Worlds, I don't know, I probably have friggin' 50 Savage World settings, something like that. I've got a ton of them. It really is a great game. Like you say, it's not perfect, but it definitely, if I could only have like a small number of RPGs, Savage Worlds would be one of them. One other cool thing, and you were talking about this at the end of your metagaming thing, the idea of skinning spells or having the spells look the way the caster wants to. Of course, Savage Worlds does this, right? It's got really basic spell descriptions, and then you can skin them any way you want and describe what your magic missile looks like, which is really cool. But yeah, Savage Worlds, 2 thumbs up, definitely an extra large.
Yeah, we like Savage Worlds.
We just played just last night. That's our game of choice right now.
Yeah.
It was interesting that Jason mentioned he had like 50 settings. I don't know if that's hyperbole, but dude, I got a buttload too. The Day After Ragnarok actually sounds kind of neat. I wouldn't mind reading it. 1950s Sword and Sorcery set in a post-apocalyptic world. That could be kind of fun. That sounds kind of rifty,
It does. It sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And by the way, though, we're old too, so
yeah, we just got into 3.5 third edition from the beginning, and handling defeats. I guess I hear that, and sometimes I kind of wonder, like, why is that so complicated? But maybe it's not the complication. Maybe it's just the tedium.
It might be. It's like I've been complaining about the skills, having to fiddle with all the skill points for quite a while. Probably about halfway through third edition run, I kind of got tired of it.
Right.
The feats, though, didn't seem to be that fiddly, or as fiddly as that. But when you compare third edition to Savage Worlds, the feats to the edges, I don't think that's much of a comparison.
No, I think even original 3.0, just the player's handbook, I think the feats were probably more complicated than the edges in Savage World. So to be honest, I actually leveled my wife's character up the other night before we played, and there's several paths you want to think about if you want to reach something. I'm heading her down what's called the Nerves of Steel, and improved Nerves of Steel, where she can eventually ignore 2 wound levels. But you have to I had to buff her vigor because I had to make plans, but it wasn't like planning to be able to do, Supreme, Ultimate Cleave, Power Attack, Combo, Doom, and you got to pick all these feats. I guess it's similar, but it just feels less heavy.
It's a smaller scale for sure.
It really is. But I guess I can see what he's saying. I know Glenn's mentioned before too, the third edition being all the complicated rules. I don't think it's, again, complication's not the thing. It's just the sheer amount. It can be, and halfway, 2/3 of the way through the 3.5 run, feats became, if you really wanted to maximize, you had to spend some time.
Yeah.
Because you could pull feats out of all sorts of books and build ridiculous combos. But I guess I understand that. He's coming from a person who Jason said he just basically played 1E D&D. That's been his main game. And then he tried 5E once. He tried, what did he try? Third edition once. What was the other one he tried? 5E, and then maybe it was second. So he's not had a big exposure to that.
Right. So if you go from nothing to
1,000 feet.
1,000 feet. I guess
Yeah.
I can understand.
I could see it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Next is we had was it our last episode or the episode before about metagaming?
That was our last one this past
Last
week.
one.
Yeah, last one.
And Jason has some things to say about that. Hold on to your hats.
Hey, Jason here. I want to talk about your metagaming conversation. So the first thing I would say is if somebody brought up some of the arguments that you guys mentioned, I think that would be the time to say, hey, you know what? You might not be a good fit for our group. But that said, let's address some of the specific things. Reskinning monsters is a great idea. The other thing, and obviously you guys know this, and you might have said it, I don't remember hearing it on the podcast, but don't name the monsters. You should never be telling characters they're encountering a troll. Describe it, and if they want to call it a troll, they can call it a troll, but you as the GM shouldn't be telling the characters the name of the monster. You shouldn't be saying this is that. I mean, if it's an elf, you can say it's an elf, right? But even then, the first time they see one, you should describe it. And once they use a term, then you can use the term they use. But if they use the wrong term, then you're just going to parrot that wrong term back. I'm going to bounce around a little bit. I took some notes while I was driving, so we'll see how good they are. Group roles. That's actually one thing I really like. I like the idea of that, and that's something I'll import into other game systems, I think. So maybe that's one thing 5e actually got right. Of course, you should know the stats of your character. That's asinine. That's clown world stuff that you're not going to know what your character stats are. In normal games where you have a character sheet, of course you know your stats. You know about what your limits are. That's just silliness. Let's see. Oh, but because of that, and the DM is going to know your stats too most of the time, so that's a good reason the DM should have the creatures made up ahead of time or have a random chart. But your creature ability shouldn't be catered around the character stats. I do agree with that. There may be specific times the creature stats are built around the character stats. Like when they send that evil party out to impersonate the character party or something like that. Totally cool. But for the most part, you shouldn't always be throwing... If you have a fire mage, they shouldn't be fighting all the water monsters all the time, right? So, what it is. Let's see. Pre-reading modules and monster manuals is cheating. I think it depends on your group, and there's a discussion to have. If the group is okay with it, if the GM's okay with it, and the players are okay with it, then no problem. But I do think it's a discussion. I think a player should mention, hey, by the way, I've read that module. And the DM's like, cool, I'm still going to run it, then it's all good. But if the DM says we're going to play this, and then the player runs out and reads it and doesn't say they read it and start coming up with, oh, the number combination is this, that's just cheating.
So I'm going to pause it here. We're all pretty much simpatico on all this. Although I will say, never saying the monster's name,
right?
As opposed to once you figure it out, or if it's popular lore, or some things there are going to be known.
Yeah.
I mean, if you only do that with the monsters, and there's other things you don't describe, you just tell them what it is.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a little bit inconsistent. So I think not naming it at first
sure,
is a fine idea, especially if you've reskinned the monster.
Right.
It doesn't even look like what the book says it looks like. But and it might be in a particular gaming world, monsters are rare.
Yep.
And there is no typical appearance to them.
Yeah, and nobody may not, people may not know what a troll is, even though they've heard the idea. No one's ever seen one.
Right.
And it's interesting. I've done what he said. I've let for a long time. I can't think of an example, but I know I've allowed you guys to think something was one thing, or that you gave it a name, and I never corrected you. You know, I just, until you got to the conclusion, like, oh, that's not what it is, or we figured it out, or you just didn't know what it was. But I've also given the name out right away, sometimes accidentally, sometimes on purpose. You know, if you got a campaign centered around tons and tons of trolls, I'm not going to sit and describe every troll in gruesome detail if they're just cannon fodder.
Right.
You know, I'm going to say it's more trolls, roll initiative.
Right. So I think it's a good idea for initial contact, and on depending on circumstances, you can keep up the charade. The charade until the curtain has been keep up the charade until the players are keenly aware that they're wrong. So
now that was interesting when he mentioned in the players reading, and down a different note, players reading the monster manual. You know, honestly, like during our Elysium game, this is when we played Cabin Con. When we played it, because it was more about power building and arenas and fighting each other and sometimes monsters, I kind of wouldn't have cared if players were reading monster manuals.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have really been a big benefit.
No, and also in general, I can't say that I care, but I do think it's cheesy. I mean, if you're trying to read up on creatures, but then again, I mean, I can't say you can't buy this. You can't buy the monster book, but it's kind of cheesy. If you're primarily a player and then you buy the monster books and you study them with the express purpose of knowing what to do when you fight them, versus if your purpose is, man, like you said on our podcast, you liked reading them because they're cool to read.
Yeah,
that's a different.
The lore.
The lore is cool, but you don't have to like memorize all the statistics all the time, and planning, you know, I know how to defeat this every single time. You happen to know what the monster needs to defeat it. And, you know, you can throw that back at the DM and say, be more creative. But, you know, how come you know what a matriarch Lamia knows and does? It's the first time I've ever used one. And now you're the master of matriarch Lamias. Come on.
Right.
You know, so, yeah.
All right.
You mentioned bringing in real world physics. And this would also come up when guys try to make gunpowder and stuff in game worlds, right? But wasn't Ars Magica? I never played Ars Magica, but for some reason I have in the back of my head, Ars Magica, the world worked the way medieval people thought the world worked. So, like, instead of real world physics and real world stuff, like the Ars Magica world actually really worked the way they thought it worked. So the Earth was like the center of the universe and stuff like that. So maybe that's the way to get around, you know, just because real world physics are what they are doesn't mean your D&D physics are that way. Groupthink, I'm a big fan of groupthink for social encounters and other things. You can't always play 18 intelligence, right? That's not or if you're playing a character's tactical genius and you're not a tactical genius, I totally think it's okay to source other players to get ideas on what to do. And I think that's all the notes I have. I think all in all, it was a good episode, good discussion. You guys brought up some really good points. And yeah, I think for the most part, I know what I was going to say. So the one way potentially around metagaming is if, for players to metagame, of course your GM is always, I think talking about GM metagaming is kind of silly, but unless they're catering things specifically to attack certain characters. I mean, so I guess a GM can be adversarial, or you can play opposing styles, but in general, I don't think the GM metagaming thing's kind of stupid argument. But one way you could do this if you didn't want metagaming is for the GM to roll the characters, the GM to control the character sheets, the GM to do all the dice rolls. So all the players are doing is sitting there saying what they're going to do, and the GM describes the results. Now, the GM would still use game mechanics to do this, but the players wouldn't have any knowledge. Sorry about that. I think I mush-mouthed the end of that. The players wouldn't have really knowledge of the system or what rolls were made or when a roll is made. I mean, they're going to kind of know because they're going to hear the click-clack of the dice. But basically, the GM keeps everything behind the screen. And, you know, he would say, oh, yeah, you know you're one of the stronger people in the party or in the village. Or, you know, your character's pretty quick. But the characters don't actually know their stats. You know, and, oh, you're feeling pretty weak. Stuff like that. I think you could do that. I think it'd be a ton of work on the GM. I don't know that all players would be up for a game like that, but I think you could do that. And that might be something for you guys to try at Cabin Con one time for a one-shot where the GM controls everything and all the players do is just talk out what they want to do, and the GM then describes the results, and the GM handles the dice rolls. Only the GM knows the stats, yada yada. And now it's a lot of work on the GM to describe how you feel and all that kind of stuff. But I do think that could be a rewarding game and a fun game to play, you know, if you did it. I would highly recommend, if you do this, the GM should pick a system they know very well. So that way it's less, it's going to be a ton of cognitive work for the GM having 3 or 4 character sheets or however many players you have in front of him and dealing with all that. So you definitely need to run it with a system you know. But I think that could be a really fun game, and it'd be a different experience for the players, because all they know about the world's what the GM's telling them. They're not going to have any dice rolls or character sheets or anything in front of them. I think that could be a lot of fun. But anyhow, that's enough of me, so I will let you go. Great show as always, and I will talk to you later. Oh, I guess I should call you out on something, so I'll do another call on that.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of weird, that last thing about the DM doing everything and all you do is sit there and...
Well, okay, so I want to tell you, I've had an experience like that, Joe. I was a player in college. This one guy invited me to play a game, and he had I didn't know my character stats at all or hit points, and he did just that. I think he might have let me roll for attacking and saving, but I didn't know what my targets were.
Huh.
I'm not positive I did. That could be an experience, but it sounds like the counter experience to the Cypher system, where the players are all, where the dice are all player facing. Being DM facing, I can pretty much say I would want no part of that other than a one-shot experiment. I can't imagine the tedium. I would feel like I'm playing the game myself, and you guys are just watching.
Yeah, I think that would be a candidate for a very short session too.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I mean,
an hour.
it could be, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it could be interesting. Just, I don't know. I'm not saying he's completely wrong, but that is not something I would ever want to do in a more than a one-off. I thought his comment on GM metagaming not being a thing, I think we even mentioned, I think that's probably true, because the GM kind of has to think meta anyway to prepare adventures. But if you are a GM that's attempting to get the gotcha moments on your players and set them up and screw them, or just, not just kill them, but really try to make life horrible on them in the sense that you're working against them, truly adversarial, that could be a metagame thing where you're like, oh, Joe's got power attack. I'm going to fight monsters that are not power attack. Joe's got, lightning bolt. So I'm going to have him fight monsters that are immune to lightning right off the gate. And always they're immune to lightning. They got +4 in their save versus lightning. And you're like, man, that spell never works,
Right,
so,
right. That would be, and that's kind of a weenie thing to do too.
Well, that's kind of a crappy GM. And that's a GM doing, maybe it's not, but the metagame, the GM does got to think about the game, thinking about the game itself outside of the game. So he's kind of got a point there. I would say I agree with him. It's probably not GM metagaming. It's just GM being a douche nozzle.
Yep, that is true. And here finally we have Jason calling us out. How dare he?
How dare he? Oh my, I can't wait to hear this.
Okay, so 2 call outs. One is when you did the spoiler in a previous episode for a movie. I forget what you spoiled now, or a book, or you spoiled something. You got to, Descent. You got to tell people when you're going to spoil stuff. It's okay to do that, but you got to say, hey, the spoiler's head for Descent, right? The other thing, there are groups that use, now I realize you guys are running your games for fun. Like I run my games for fun. My games aren't therapy, period. But some people do games as therapy. And there's a guy down under who use RPGs as like a tool to work with kids with like learning disabilities, stuff like that, or kids with like Alzheimer's or not Alzheimer's, Asperger's. But and people are gonna get angry at me for messing that up, but whatever. I got people in the family with both those conditions. So I'm. Clarify, I'm not saying you guys are wrong, so calling out's not really a fair term, but I guess that's where this goes. But there are groups that do that, and I think if you're in a group and everybody knows, or you've talked ahead of time, say, hey, listen, we're going to try to do this and work out our psychological issues, or, I want to use this kind of therapy. I think that's totally cool and totally valid. And we should mention that some people do that. Now, does that mean every group should do that? Heck no. Some games are beer and pretzels games. Some games are just fun games. I don't want social issues in the games I'm running. That said, if somebody does want that in their games, more power to them. So I guess that's not really calling out, but I guess we should say that some people do use role-playing games that way. I don't know that you guys said they didn't, so I know I'm backpedaling here a little bit, but I just thought it needed to be thrown out there. But listen to your next one. Talk.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't believe it. I'm so offended.
Extremely.
Not at all, man. This is cool. I tell you what, first of all, I gotta make a comment. I'm gonna call Jason out on his call out. The Descent.
Oh, hey, there's a word for what you're getting ready to do.
What's that called?
Calling out. Is that recursion?
Ooh, no, recursion. You got to loop back around. Maybe, whatever. Descent's 15 years old. If you haven't seen it, it's not my problem. But I get it. I'll try to do that in the future because it's a good movie. Someone had never heard of it, but I can see why you might want to say spoilers. But 15 years old, man, that's a pretty old movie.
Yeah.
That's all right though. I'll take it, Jason. I'm not mad, dude. It's cool.
There's a lot of movie files that, and I think Jason, you've mentioned that he probably is a movie file of some degree.
Probably. He likes them.
That they really don't like the spoilers.
Understood.
So,
fair enough.
Right. As far as the rest, that fellow down under, I think he's actually a therapist.
Yes, I actually know. I can't think of his name, but I know he's been on like Gaming and BS and several other podcasts, the Wild Die podcast, and he's a pretty reasonable dude. And I believe he works with kids on the spectrum and with different sort of like behavior issues, and he helps them work through their problems. And I don't think we said this, but I would not say you could use, if a therapist is under the control of that, he could probably use D&D to help them work out some things. That's fine. But I think our topic was, I don't think there's any rules. There are no rules in the game that actually, to my knowledge, allow you to do any kind of therapy. And why are you trying to do therapy if there's not a therapist there?
Right. So usually it's, and I personally am not a big proponent of psychotherapy either. It has its uses.
Yep.
If
Limited.
you don't have a good one, there's a lot of things that your supports can do. Friends, family, community. As long as you're willing to talk to people, you have somebody that you can level with and sound out your ideas. That can alleviate a lot of anxiety and other sorts of issues that a lot of people have. Most people don't take advantage of that, or they may not have that.
And to each your own, but we seem our solution is either, oh gosh, you need to get into therapy, or here, take some drugs. Yeah. That seems to be our solution to everything these days.
The therapy to me is the better solution than here's a pill. Although a pill in a desperate situation to get you off the ledge, so to speak, not necessarily just talking about suicide, but to get you off the ledge to where you can actually hear reason from somebody else is fine.
And then this is just our opinion. Neither one of us are licensed therapists.
No, I'm not a therapist.
Nor would we want to be.
I'm pretty sure, Randy, you know what my number one therapy advice is. I haven't said it in a while, but I did say it a lot for a while.
Oh, I'm blanking. I'm sorry. Tired.
Stop it.
Yeah, true. That's right. I keep doing this. Well, quit. Quit doing that.
Yeah.
That will help you. People might like it better if you don't do that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good advice.
But yeah, a therapist using any tool at his disposal as a tool to help people, including D&D or whatever RPG they want to use, that's great. Especially folks on the spectrum, because he works with autistic folks, I believe.
I believe so. I wish I could remember his name. He was a pretty cool dude. I've heard him be on lots of podcasts. And
it's interesting. One of the things about folks on the spectrum is they have a hard time expressing themselves and dealing with each other, or dealing with people in the social situation. And D&D is a social game, no matter what folks want to say about it. It's a social game. And most games have a social component because you're playing with people anyway. And then a kind of an ironic bit about gamers is they have issues with social situations. So
that's at least that's one of the many tropes that come along with gamers. A trope that gamers
it might be more for it might be more for video gamers than for RPG gamers.
Well, sure, because we don't play video
tabletop gamers.
Absolutely, because we don't play video games. That's why that's true.
But yeah, and I think what our comments were with the social commentary and gender exploration, which we don't get.
Yeah,
the game does not have a gender exploration component to it.
It does not, absolutely not. Nor does it have anything to do with anything psychological issue exploration on itself. No. I think a trained therapist would have to find ways to ingeniously, like I've heard the guy talk about, the guy in Australia that does he designs his adventures with specific things in mind, so his players face certain social situations and challenges. So that's fine, but the game itself doesn't have, here's the tool for dealing with your identity. Here's a tool for dealing with the fact that you have autism. Here's a tool for dealing with the fact that you get mad really easy. They're not in the game.
All this being said, I know and have been also a person who have said, I've had a hard day today at work or whatever. Let's just sit down and kill monsters. And it's kind of gives you kind of a cathartic release.
Stress relief,
stress relief or whatever. You feel better, you're with your friends or whatever. But the game doesn't tell you that's what you can do. But after you've played it for a while, you recognize it as a thing that can help. So in a way, many people have used it like that.
Yeah, and that's cool. I don't care if it helps you, great.
Yeah,
but we just were just find it not as something that I want to. Those things I don't want to explore at my table. Anyway, but is that all we have from Jason?
Yes, he called us out, so we had to put the stomp down on him. Is that what we just did?
I don't think so. I think we kind of caved in at the end and agreed with him.
Yeah, we did.
So, oh well. All right, dude. A second segment, which is only if we feel like it. If we got any, we call it winging it, right?
Winging it.
So, any ideas? Well, I know we talked about VTTs because we were playing on Zoom last night, and we were waxing poetic before the podcast about our opinions on that.
That's what we always do.
We do. We're pretty poetic people, in general. That's me. So anyway, last night we played, and I think we played from about 7:30 to 11:30, about 4 hours, and I had a good time. But I really find it, and I think I was off my game because I kept screwing the cards up. I wasn't like Jeff was supposed to go first, and he went right in the middle of the combat because he goes, I can't believe so-and-so went before a queen. I have a queen. I'm like, oh my gosh, my head is totally up my butt on this.
Yeah, and I screwed up initiative. Just the one time though, right?
Yeah, but I just
the one combat.
Yeah, it kind of threw me off. I had a good time, but I tell you, it is not a replacement for face-to-face. No way. Not
a full replacement.
No.
I mean, because we obviously played, but it's not a one-for-one exchange.
No,
and as good.
And I'll complain sometimes when I'm not thinking. I'll say, oh, it's so much crap to prepare. But I did enjoy trying to find those photos, when I was showing you the giant frog that attacked you and how the one guy looked. And that was kind of cool. But I'm also, that's part of my favorite way to prep, which is over prep. I mean, we got through maybe 1/3 of the adventure. And so we barely started it, honestly. And then I don't know if did you notice that I was trying to non-heavy-handedly, so I wasn't railroading you. I really wanted to get to the adventure. And I really liked when you told me that one time. You're like, yeah, I want to go out and explore. He goes, but I don't want to waste any game time. I just want to be out and about.
Yeah, just wanted to let you know what I was doing. Yeah,
right. So you have some ammunition, so you know the city whenever we come back to the city. That makes sense.
That and my character's one of his hindrances is that he's driven.
Right.
So while he could have sat in the hotel room and just enjoyed himself, he couldn't do it. He had to get out there and do something and find his enemy. That's one of his other hindrances. And which you never gave me a Benny for playing my
I
hindrances.
knew that was coming.
Anyone who's not watching this, which means nobody because we don't do this in video, I'm
Right.
wiggling my finger at him.
I'm getting finger wiggled. That doesn't sound good.
No, not at all.
Anyway,
I'm
though,
married.
I tell you what, dude, that's the hard thing I have with Savage Worlds is keeping track. And I can tell, like I try to listen because Jenny, your wife, will play her hindrances up without saying that's what she's doing,
Right.
which is fine.
Yes.
But I think now, if we were face to face, I'd like to say it would help. It may not. Yeah, you absolutely should have gotten a Benny for being out. But I mean, I can't give you a Benny every time you come into sitting. I'm going to go out and about looking. That can't be a Benny. But for the first time, for sure, I should have given it to you.
That's I don't know. Since I'm not running Savage Worlds much, I haven't read their DMing advice.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the advice is for handing out bennies for playing your hindrances.
Yeah.
I mean, do you do it at the drop of a hat? Like every time you're not in a combat situation, or maybe even then, I have just played my hindrance, say you're scared of snakes. Oh, there's a snake. Oh, there's a snake. Oh, there's a snake. And you get a Benny every time. It seems like that could get old.
Yeah, no, yeah. And they even say that. Like, for example, because Joe's character just arrived at a new city, he's looking for someone. His character's driven to find this guy as a wanted man he's looking for. So you're out, you can't rest. You got to keep looking. And so once you do that, they say give them the Benny the first time, but you don't give them the Benny for repeating the same action for that hindrance. Right. You need to wait for a new situation where you can display while you're driven.
Okay, that's good.
And I think that's good. So like, when Jenny's character's ruthless, I can't keep giving her Bennies just because she's merciless to this, the witch that you guys, or the sorcerer that you guys killed.
Right.
So, and I think I had some hard time hearing, not because, partly because I'm old, but with several people jabbering at the same time. And it wasn't extreme. It shouldn't have been, it would not have been an issue at the table, but it absolutely was one with the computer. Right. And then I had my wife who was sitting across the actual table from me and we're playing. And that's great, but if she's talking to you, and then if she's talking and someone else is talking on the screen, it's impossible for me to hear. Like at one time, it was you, and it was Joyce, and it was Debbie, and I was like, you were all talking at the same time. That's when I said, hey, hold on, Joe, Joyce, Debbie, because I have to go in that order. I can't. It's hard to manage that, which could be hard in a face-to-face, but I think the players are better at knowing when to pause and let someone else speak.
Right, because when you can't, it's harder to track people's facial expressions when there's an avatar. Correct. Small avatar.
They're about an inch and a half wide.
Right.
2 inches wide.
So maybe for me, because my wife and I were sharing the camera, there were a lot of times when I was leaning over to one side and you couldn't even see my face. So but you could still hear me talking if I was trying to do that. And audio in these tabletops and in Zoom, if two or more people are talking, they interfere with each other and you can't hear them.
Correct.
So it's a problem that you don't have face to face.
And I don't want, Patrick and his wife shared a computer. You and your wife shared a computer. I actually like that because that's less for me to keep track of on the screen. Yeah. And I'm trying to use a whiteboard to draw. And so again, I guess, it's the problems that I don't want to deal with. It's probably the fact that I'm an old dude and don't want to deal with the technology that much. But it's probably more, I think it just takes away from the intimacy of the experience. That sounds a little frou-frou, but seriously though, I mean, when you're at a table with your buddies and friends and you're really getting into it, I just think more gets accomplished when it's face to face. And you've seen me GM. I tend to get more animated, and I can't. Like Deb was laughing because I was doing hand signals and I had turned my screen off and I was like, yeah, the sign is about this big. And it's, and she's like, they can't figure that out. She's just laughing like, yeah, forget about that. So,
Yeah. So that's one of the many reasons why it's not as good of an experience. However, I would say if it's your only, so right now for us in hopefully the last gasps, forgive the joke, of COVID, we will revert to
Soon, I
more
hope.
face-to-face gaming.
Yeah.
But for some people, even before COVID, that was their only way to game in a lot of situations.
Right.
So they don't have the, and we don't have, in some respects, the option. So the negatives are much more in our face.
Yes.
If we had multiple gaming options, this would just be one of them, and we would just say pros and cons, no big deal.
Right.
But I think it's more pointed for us because we're kind of forced into the situation, as it were.
And I think just under the surface, I don't know if it came across, I was really annoyed playing online the other night, just for that very reason. I'm tired of it, and I haven't done that much of it. I'm already tired of it.
Right.
And like I've heard him talk in some other podcasts, I have zero interest in a online convention. Zero.
Right.
Will not go. There's nothing they're not gonna bring me in with anything, I don't think. And because with conventions, it's all about being amongst other gamers and seeing things and touching things, being a part of it, playing cool games. And I'm not even gonna go to conventions where I gotta wear a mask. I mean, and
Right.
I'm not much into conventions anyway, but even if I was, I wouldn't go to Gen Con this year wearing a mask. No way. Not interested.
The mask mutes your part of your human exchange because most of your facial expressions are covered.
Yeah. And a lot of the people I hear, especially in the OSR, Tinkar and Glenn and a few others, they all talk about they go to conventions to hobnob and visit with friends.
Right.
Well, how is an online convention? They can do that anyway. I can call you right up like I am right now. We can just talk for 2 hours. What's the big deal? It's not this. Why would I drive? Why would we drive? I mean, if you still lived in Oklahoma or whatever, why would I drive or fly 200 miles and you fly 300 miles for us to meet at a convention? If other than we really wanted to see each other, but it wouldn't be the same. Would be nothing special if we talked daily or every week, on the computer. So I don't know. It's just not, I don't think it's my bag. I think the long and the short of it is it's just not my thing.
And also, I think that the biggest component of irritation is the have to.
Yeah.
Side of it. If there wasn't the this is what you must do because whatever the reason for it,
Mm-hmm.
You have to.
Right.
Then it wouldn't be as much of an irritation. It might still be irritating to be online, but it wouldn't be as much.
And I do get that, like some people, like my daughter and her husband, for a while, they got a young baby, and when they were playing, I think they still are. I mean, they would play like 7:30 to 11 because they can't get a babysitter. Even when there was no COVID, they would play online, and their DM was in Lansing and a couple players from other places. And it was just easier for them to play, and they enjoy it. So, I mean, hey, if you like it, absolutely do it. But it's a necessary evil for me right now.
Yeah. Hey, something else that was on my mind.
Yeah. You can keep multiple thoughts in your head at the same time.
It's difficult.
Yeah, I know. God, that's hard. Go ahead. I want to see it. Joe is straining right now.
I'm straining.
It's coming to him.
So I'm straining to be able to put my thoughts into good words.
Okay.
So everybody will know what I'm getting at.
Right.
So
don't go with bad words.
Rule system.
Yeah. Okay. Something in the rule system.
Mm-hmm. How important do you think it is for different types of task resolution to look different at the table? As in, you have a skill check to do, especially if it's a non-pressure situation.
Okay.
But there is enough of repercussion for failure that you need to make a roll.
Right.
So skill check versus combat, physical hand combat.
So the actual, you mean your actual choice of the system that you use to do it?
No.
Important?
How important is it to make it look, to have it be different at the table? So it could be the same system. This is just a theoretical.
Correct. But you're saying, like, so when we do skills, we roll under our ability. When we do attack, we do base attack bonus and roll above. Whenever we grapple, we roll percentiles. And whenever we have a chase scene, we pull out cards.
Right. So So how important is that as opposed to having a universal resolution mechanic for determining success at whatever?
So the big example in the room would be probably third edition D20.
D20 for
Where
everything.
high is good, low is bad.
Oh,
Very few times do you break that resolution mechanic.
right.
How
I know
important-
in OSR people don't like. There are among the OSR, not all, but among the OSR, there are people that, and I've heard this before, saying that before I even knew about OSR or grognards or anything, a fellow said, because I was like, one of the things I didn't like about first and second edition is the sometimes high is good, sometimes low is good, sometimes use a percentile, sometimes you use a D20. I thought that was kind of weird. He said that's what, and then grappling was really stupid.
Yeah, crazy, yeah.
So, and he was like, that's what gives the game charm. And at the time, I thought that was really a dumb comment. And I kind of am less thinking that's a dumb comment, but I still don't think that it's accurate. Maybe to that person,
right,
or people who like having the different things, it's charming or whatever, and having one way to resolve a task is boring, perhaps.
Well, I think I was going to say I can see that when I think about AD&D, and maybe a little before. I mean, in the original, not original D&D, but back me, you had tons of the very, roll a D6 for initiative. Now roll a D20 to hit. And then when you had AD&D, you had all the things you talked about. Sometimes I feel like it just feels completely random. And if I was learning AD&D now for the first time, I would just be thinking, why are these rules changing constantly? The price, I don't know. Is there a price you pay for a unified mechanic? I don't know. I think I would answer this. I would like my game to be somewhere in between. I don't think I want a game where we just roll. Once is a strong word. I played the heck out of third edition, and I used to praise it for that. I'm with you. I think maybe there's a time for some change up to sort of, if you can, elicit a feel that fits the action that you're trying to do at the table, rather than just D20 high is a success, D20 low is failure for everything you do.
Well, I'm not saying that I feel it's important. I'm wondering. I'm just bringing it up for discussion. How
important?
Yeah, it's totally theoretical because it's a matter of game style, gameplay preference with any player.
Right.
Certain players, they just want to. I would imagine if all you want to do is sit down and run a module, probably don't care one way or the other as long as you know what you're supposed to do.
Right.
But I remember for D&D, for surprise,
yes,
there was the D6,
yes,
or whatever. But then you had Drow only surprised in 1 and 8.
Right. And one creature would throw it all off. Yeah.
But there were probably a half a dozen examples.
Sure.
Maybe more. And then they had a table because there was an article in one of the early Dragon magazines on how you resolve all these various different things. And you have different dice determining surprise for different creatures and how you mesh them together. And when I looked at it, I was like, that's dumb. Why don't you just have some universal way of doing it? Or I didn't think of that word at the time, but the way I was thinking was making a surprise determination in such a way that all these different creatures had consideration, but it wasn't a different die for each one.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I think I don't think it matters because of personal preference, but for me, too many rules constantly changing. I don't know if I just don't like it or I find it harder when I read. I get like, I don't want to memorize all this crap. I mean, as an older player, there's times I do really like the simplicity of the D20.
Right.
But I do understand that sometimes I've run a chase in Savage Worlds, and I like their new system. I like how you lay the cards out for every distance in between, even every increment of space. You have a card, and depending on whether you get what suits you draw, different things can happen, and it definitely adds a lot of flavor to the actual playing, the actual tactile playing of the game, and also I think it tends to give a good adjudication of what a chase would be like, rather than you rolled high, I rolled low, you caught me.
Right. Well, yeah, because in a chase, especially when we're talking about a chase, we're thinking about one either we've read about in a book or seen in a movie or on TV, and there's a certain feel that those chases have, and maybe we've experienced one in real life. I mean, not saying I've been chased by the police, but you know, I've been chased by my sisters or whatever. Played football, and when you get chased, it's not it's not as straightforward as a lot of other things are. So having a lot of variation in what can happen moment by moment, and having some tension, that's more satisfying than a single roll or whatever. It could be any kind of resolution mechanic, apart from a D20. If it's just you do this one thing and you're done, and the chase, you either get caught or not, that would be dissatisfying.
Well, especially, I mean, your foot race across the flat field. Okay, that could be one die roll. A foot race to a metropolis marketplace, a marketplace in Metropolis, that'd be different. A foot race across rooftops in some
through a jungle,
or on a boat, in a river, in the ocean, in a car, on the highway, on the side roads. Those would all have obstacles and challenges that would be nice if we could implement them in a more random way while play, which is why I like the cards. But I'm getting specific. I don't know. I don't think as long as there's not too many, if the number of rules aren't onerous, I don't have an issue in whether it's a single unified mechanic or 3 or 4 or 5. And you get more than 5 or 6 different rules, I start to be like, you're killing me, dude.
Right.
You're killing me.
For me, I think talking about chasing, most systems don't really have anything that they use for chase.
Oh, and they're usually not good. Savage Worlds took several iterations to get decent.
Right.
All right. I don't know. Got anything else you want to blabber about?
No, I don't think so.
All right, let's wrap this puppy up then, man.
All righty. Well, this is Joe.
And I'm Randy.
And remember, if you can't be big like us, then be geeks like us.